Joining us now is commentator and president and founder of Strelmark, Hilary Fordwich. Hilary, thank you for joining us. There is so much to unpack from President Trump's address yesterday. I love it how he made the chamber burst into laughter when he just highlighted some of the Doge waste. Let's take a look.
$40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. $8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of.
He's so strong. You can't really argue with this when you just hear about the amount of waste that has been discovered and how long it's been running on for, who knows. What did you make of yesterday's address?
Well, Gabriella, pleasure to be back with you again. There's so much to unpack here. First of all, with regard to the clip you just played, actually, personally, I don't like it when someone uses sort of an absolute there when he said nobody. What he should have said is that's an oxymoron, isn't it? A migrant that's sedentary and no one knows what it means. What he should, oh no, sorry, we don't know what that means. Not nobody, because, but I did think it was good. But when he said no one knows where Lesotho is, actually, I did think to myself at the time, Gabriella, are the people of Africa in Lesotho going to take tremendous umbrage? And I'm surprised there wasn't a tweet this morning from people of Lesotho saying, who doesn't know, or somebody pointing to the fact that, you know, maybe not everyone in the world knows their geography correctly. So that was the only thing. However, there were many things where he made these facetious remarks, and he did sort of intertwine some comedy, which I thought was very good. Some other things that really stood out to me, Gabriella, as the cameras panned across the Democrats versus the Republicans, you saw in your there the congresswomen wearing pink, and yet they all voted against the bill that was from Lake and Riley, actually, that was to protect girls in female sports. And actually, I've met now Peyton, the young lady, where the male volleyball transgender who chose to want to be in a female sport, he smashed the volleyball so hard that it caused her brain damage. And these women wearing pink, obviously they're probably wearing it for these transgender people, but they're not wearing pink for girls. So that was hypocrisy. I also thought that DJ, the little 13-year-old Gabriella, who had been told that he only had 5 months to live many years ago, about I think 5 or 6 years ago, the little boy was absolutely adorable. And when the Democrats didn't stand for a little 13-year-old boy who is still living, that actually, ironically, demonstrated what they stood for, which is everything against what this current administration is doing. And that's one of the things that President Trump did open with. He opened with, there's nothing I can say that's going to make you want to stand. And he was really right. So last but not least, I think there was a very public display for the world, not just the US population, of what the Democrats are for. So by not standing, therefore, increasing taxes. And by the way, maybe we should make sure that we just decrease the taxes of all Republicans, no Democrats, since they don't want it. But in all seriousness, I do think they displayed, that means they're for higher taxes. They're for crime and illegals. They're for the economy being absolutely devastated by the Trump administration. Therefore, providing for people that are not American taxpayers. And the list goes on, Gabriella. They demonstrated it publicly.
They really did, and it was really sad to see that they didn't want to clap, they didn't want to stand up for the 13-year-old boy, they didn't want to clap when there were members of Lake and Riley's families there when Trump was honouring Lake and Riley. There were so many opportunities where they could have done that, and they failed to, and they looked miserable. Every time the cameras panned to them, they just looked so uncomfortable. And the Democrats just seem to be struggling. They're trying so hard to form some strong attack line on Donald Trump, but it's just blowing back at them. There's this clip that we'll play for you where there are 22 Democrat senators. They're all using the same script word for word, and they've posted it on social media. Take a look at this.
I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
Oh, it's so chaotic, but it just reminds me of the vision we used to see throughout the election campaign, where we'd see Kamala Harris repeating the same old lines at her speeches, and then they would get clipped up together and put on social media, and it really weakened the message. I think the Democrats are just really failing at getting whatever message they're trying to send across successfully.
Well, yes, because what they're proving, Gabriella, is that they're not thinking for themselves. They're going off talking points correctly because there's no way there's a coincidence of everybody saying the same thing. So they don't have independent thinking, number one. Number two, linking these two parts together, this and your previous question, when you talked about the fact that they're so miserable, remember what Shakespeare said, and he was so wise about human nature. He said, laugh and the world laughs with you. Cry and you shall cry alone, meaning people don't want to be around miserable people all the time. So they're miserable, they're negative. And this was one of their problems. They haven't learnt their lesson from the election because they didn't have anything to vote for. They're against everything, but they don't have anything to vote for. They never were honest. They didn't say, we are standing for illegals coming in and that you, the American taxpayer, even minorities and even poorer people, out of the taxes you pay, you are going to provide free housing, free meals, $5,000 on a debit card, and free healthcare to these illegals. So that number one, they were dishonest, but number two, they really have not got a positive message because they dare not say what they really were for, and it's all coming out now.
And before we move on from the Democrats, we just have to play one more clip of this Congresswoman who accidentally said the quiet part out loud, speaking about fighting Doge.
You don't care about this country, and that is unacceptable if you claim to be the President of the United States. So we are here. We are not going anywhere. We are going to continue to fight back, and we are going to continue to speak lies to his truth, to his stealing, and to his cheating. Thank you.
Hilary, we're going to continue to speak lies to his truth. You know, they just don't have a case when fighting Doge, I think.
Well, it was a Freudian slip. She said what she meant to say. It's lies for his truths. I really do think, most importantly, they did not read the room. They're not listening to the electorate. They're not listening to what did happen, which was a sweeping victory. Instead of taking lessons, Gabriella, they're not listening. They're not reading the room. And they're continuing actually to, well, there's that expression, dig your own grave. They're continuing to dig themselves in a hole.
I want to talk to you about the trade war. This week we saw Trump impose 25% taxes or tariffs on Mexican and Canadian imports, so he limited the levy to 10% on Canadian energy. And we heard from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He, of course, labelled the tariffs as dumb.
Donald, in the over 8 years you and I have worked together, we've done big things. We signed a historic deal that has created record jobs and growth in both of our countries. We've done big things together on the world stage. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see.
He went on to announce that Canada would slap on more than $100 billion of American goods over the course of 21 days. And Trump responded by trolling Canada's Prime Minister, saying, please explain to Governor Trudeau of Canada that when he puts on a retaliatory tariff on the US, our reciprocal tariff will immediately increase by a like amount. And this morning, Trump announced that he would temporarily spare car makers from the 25% import tax. So this trade war is making people around the world pretty nervous. We've seen the stock market react. What's your analysis of it?
Well, Gabriella, it needs to be fair. It is ridiculous, whoever made those trade deals over the years. I mean, Prime Minister Modi from India came to the capital, and in India, they have 150% tariffs on US goods. He, in all his magnanimous gesture, he lowered it to 100% tariffs. This is ridiculous. The EU has over 10% tariffs on anything that the US tries to import into the EU, whereas like cars, and we only have a 2.5%. It needs to be fair. It needs to be reciprocal. And when people want it lowered, we'll just do the same. It's going to be reciprocal. And I think that that's fair. And I don't understand why other people don't think that it's fair. And by the way, the US did help rebuild the entire world after the Second World War. Now, there was a time when the US did that, but I will say this. President McKinley, he was the one that had extensive tariffs. The US was so wealthy back in the 19th century. I believe it was 1870, they established a blue ribbon commission to try to determine how to spend all that money. We need to have the money levied by tariffs that are fair to other nations, and that's better and fairer for Americans.
And Donald Trump has also acknowledged that this trade war, it's also about stopping fentanyl coming into the United States from Canada.
You're absolutely right. That's actually the most important point. Sorry, I missed that, which is it's a drug war, not necessarily just also a tariff war. When you see the drugs, the fentanyl that is coming over from the US border, from the Canadian and Mexican border, 4.8 million Americans have died from fentanyl, and that needs to stop. And yes, they can stop it by helping to man their borders on both the northern Canadian border and the southern Mexican border. Absolutely, it's a drug war.
Now, finally, I want to speak to you about what is going on with Ukraine. We know that Volodymyr Zelensky says that this White House meeting with Donald Trump did not go the way it was supposed to. Well done for acknowledging that. And he says it was regrettable. Now, after causing all this drama, he says he's ready to sign this minerals deal, something he could have done at the White House. But as we know, he couldn't have handled it any worse, that meeting, if he tried. But just days after the Oval Office spat, he told media outlets that the end to the war was very, very far away. Now, after this, we saw Donald Trump pause US military aid to Ukraine. Here is just a bit more of what Zelensky has had to say.
What happened in the White House instead of our talks is regrettable. But we need to find the strength to move on, to respect each other, as we have always respected America, Europe, and all our partners, and to do everything together to bring peace closer.
It's a bit hard to listen to that after watching him instigate the fight with Trump and JD Vance. But this latest development, the United States has now paused intelligence sharing with Ukraine. So that's possibly including critical data for identifying Russian strike targets. That's likely to have pretty serious consequences. How significant is this in terms of, I suppose, putting pressure on Ukraine to show more of a willingness to really engage in peace talks?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely correct about this. What I would say is better late than never, always. But just that display, and of course it was very public in the White House. The only good thing I would say about it is, as the tax-paying public, it actually in some ways was wonderful to be able to see such transparency. Imagine if this had all happened behind doors. We saw it in real time. I don't know that that's actually really ever happened in the world before, really, when you think about it. So I thought that was, taking a positive away from it. However, now with regard to Zelensky, obviously, he flew directly to the UK. He met with Keir Starmer. He met with the King. So I'm not going to take any British credit there, but who knows who spoke to him? I think some European leaders. Definitely people must have got through with a sense to him. Now, with regard to the minerals deal, Gabriella, obviously having an American presence there, American companies, American staff and drilling, they will provide their own private security. I think that there is eventually a win-win for the Ukraine, for all of Europe, actually, and actually Russia, because of Russia, purportedly, they want peace too. I think it's a very complex issue, but I think that this is, overall, this seems to me to be a good step. He's waving the white flag. He's actually admitted as much as he can, I think, as him, but he's admitted an error, which I think it's manly to do. We're in a better place than we were a few days ago, definitely, towards peace.
And I just want to get your thoughts on what did you make of what Keir Starmer had to say after he met with Zelensky. He said he has, proposed his plan for peace, but that also includes potentially having boots on the ground. So obviously a different approach to what Donald Trump was suggesting. What did you make of Keir Starmer's actions?
Yes, actually, I would say two-tier Keir, or a slippery, slimy Keir, slippery, slimy Starmer, as he's also referred to. I'm not a major fan. What I would say is that I would look at polls, and polling that I've seen from GB News was only 52% of the UK approve. I've seen other UK polls that said around 50%. So, I mean, you've got at least half of the British public doesn't agree. I would look to that. I think that's very important. So his polling isn't good. His public support isn't good. So I don't think I'm the only one who says, you know, UK boots on the ground. I don't think that that's what people want. And I think it was not good to contradict basically President Trump.
Yeah.
However, somebody spoken to Zelensky, somebody somewhere, I don't know who, has though got Zelensky to capitulate, and that's good.
So good to speak with you, commentator and president and founder of Strelmark, Hilary Fordwich. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Pleasure, absolutely, Gabriella. Thank you for having me.